B, the fedora, C, the stole, or D, the mitre? Once again, what vestment is commonly worn during the sacrament of confession? A kippah, a fedora, a stole, or a mitre?
785-621-4110. That's 785-621-4110. All right. Now let's get straight into it with Father Nick Parker talking about what is forgiveness. In case you guys don't know, Father Nick Parker has been a priest for 17 years and has served in 6 parishes before becoming a pastor at Immaculate Heart of Mary Parish here in Hayes. He's a priest, a concert pianist, a doctor of theology, and now he's recently completed the remodeling of Immaculate Heart of Mary Parish here in Hayes. You can generally say he's a jack of all trades. That's a good thing to be there, Father. Do you know how to remodel and everything too?
I don't know how to remodel. I know how to ask other people.
So that's why we
to
got
help
other
me
people
with
to do it.
Yes. Yeah, that's why
Father
I get other
did
people to do it
not
for me.
paint the church. That was somebody
not.
else.
I painted one star.
Yes.
One star in the church.
That's
yeah,
fantastic.
It's the one that looks a little bit better than all the others.
I thought you were going to say the one that looks a little bit worse.
No.
Awesome. Well, we have a wonderful conversation about ready to be had here. I actually had someone in yesterday. We barely touched on this. So I'm glad to see that that's what we're going to be talking about. But why did you want to come with this topic of forgiveness anyway?
Well, mainly because I think it's oftentimes misunderstood. And when it's misunderstood, it can really eat at a person. It can really just kind of get into their minds, getting into their hearts, because a lot of people base whether or not they have forgiven someone upon their feelings and their thoughts and their memories. And they think, well, I still feel hurt by what happened, so I must not have forgiven the person, or I can't forget what happened, so I must not have forgiven, and we're never going to be the same friends we were as before, so I must not have fully forgiven the person. And in a sense, it can almost be sort of spiritually torturous for people if they don't really understand what forgiveness is, and if they can't really know how to forgive as well. There's just a lot of pain and struggle and turmoil that can go along with that. So that's kind of why I wanted to address what it is and the importance of it.
Good. Then we'll just break it down here in a minute and see if we can get everybody out there a little bit more understanding into this. I want to congratulate Jody Patton, who is our trivia winner. Congratulations to Jody. The question there, what vestment is commonly worn during the sacrament of confession? The stole. So congratulations to Jody. We will get you put into that drawing for that gift certificate to Messenger Traditional Catholic Books and Gifts here in Hayes, and we will draw that winner at 6 o'clock. So make sure that you stay tuned, and we'll get another question here in about half an hour. We're talking with Father Nick Parker about what is forgiveness. So I think maybe the first place that you're wanting to start is to learn what it is. Maybe we should learn what it isn't.
That's exactly where I want to start. I think the best way to understand it is to take out all the other things that it is not. So with this, we're going to have to combat a lot of just various misconceptions about forgiveness. The first misconception is forgiveness being forgetfulness. A lot of the times we hear the phrase "forgive and forget." It's a nice thought. It's an ideal, but it's not always possible, and it's not always even a good idea. Especially when somebody has hurt us very deeply, when someone has very much done a wrong to us. We can't always forget those moments. We can't always forget those occasions. But also, think about the idea of forgive and forget if someone is sort of a repeat offender. Let's say, for example, someone comes up to me and just out of the blue, they slap me. And I'm good at forgiving and forgetting, so I forgive and I forget. But 2 seconds later, they slap me again. And so I forgive and I forget again, and they hit me again and hit me again and hit me again. Well, in the end, you're still supposed to forgive the person. But at the same time, you might want to wisen up and learn how to duck.
Yeah.
So forgiveness does not mean forgetfulness. And sometimes you still need to forgive the person, but take yourself out of harm's way for the good of yourself and for the good of the person so that they don't keep sinning against you. so you can stop this sinner from sinning as well. It's actually a charitable thing to say, I'm gonna take you away from your chance to sin.
Absolutely. And can we dig a little bit further into that? Because you make such a wonderful point that all of us need to know. Christians aren't called to be doormats. And like you said, especially because there are a lot of people out there in abusive relationships, whether it's physical, mental abuse, to put yourself right back in that would be, just like your example, dangerous for you, but also possibly spiritually dangerous. So can we dig a little bit further into, what that means as to not being a doormat so that you're not putting yourself into dangerous situations?
Right. I think there's a lot of ways to approach this. One of the ways I like to approach it is dignity of the person. Dignity of the person. You have dignity. Don't treat yourself as though you don't. So you got to make sure that you don't let people just walk all over you, that you let people abuse you and that sort of thing. But at the same time, as Christians, we are supposed to love everyone. And by everyone, we mean everyone, even the people who are treating us as doormats. But there's a lot of great stories. I can even think of stories of lives of the saints who have their persecutors coming after them. And when their persecutors are persecuting them, they say, you can't keep persecuting me. Why? Because it's for my good? No, they don't say that. They say, you can't keep persecuting me because this is about your mortal soul. So in essence, not only does standing up for your own dignity help you, but it helps them to realize that no, this is putting them in danger as well. This is spiritually dangerous for the sinner, for the offender. And so by upholding all of the person's dignity, I mean, that's basically what that does is when you stop the sin, it stops the offense happening to you, and it stops the offender from continuing to make the offense.
And I think the reason why this can be so healing and is so good to hear is because if you are in that situation, a lot of people have a hard time cutting ties. And I get why. It's because we want to be liked. We don't want to hurt people's feelings. And we do.
And you don't want to lose relationships either.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But at some point, that may be exactly what is needed, either for healing of the relationship or at least to open the person's eyes that, okay, I didn't realize I was hurting them in such a way that they now have to distance themselves from me. And that's kind of actually like the church in, excommunication and stuff like that. The purpose there isn't like, well, sorry, we don't like you. The purpose is actually supposed to be a healing measure.
It's supposed to be restorative. Absolutely.
So if we look at it in that way, then there are some of those relationships where we are going to have to take that hard line and say, okay, I want to be in this relationship with you, but it's not good for me and it's not good for you. So I need to take a step back. And if healing can be had, that's great. But this is what's going to have to change, and maybe have those difficult conversations.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. We are going to dig in then to our next one about what is forgiveness not.
Yes, the next thing that forgiveness is not. Forgiveness is not the same thing as atonement. Now, atonement is basically defined as making up for the sin. All right. So it doesn't mean that everything has been put back right again once forgiveness has happened. One of the analogies that is sometimes used is, let's say that there's a boy playing baseball in his backyard. He hits the ball, but he hits it too far and he breaks the neighbor's window. Well, he goes over to the neighbor and he tells the neighbor, I broke your window. I'm sorry. Will you forgive me? The neighbor says, well, of course I forgive you. Does that mean that the window is automatically repaired? No. So is the boy forgiven? Yes. But in order to make things right again, then there has to be some sort of repairing of the window. And that's what atonement is making things right again. This can actually then lead to a little bit of a related topic, that forgiveness doesn't mean that justice doesn't have to happen. So if somebody commits a crime, we forgive the sinner, but there still needs to be something that is corrective, something that is restorative that is done. And so it's okay to forgive while at the same time seeking justice, because there needs to be the righting of wrongs and the correction of actions. That's a good thing, and that can actually be a very charitable thing, once again, for the sake of the sinner.
Yeah, I think if you look in the catechism, it defines justice as to give the other their due or something like that.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, in this situation, then what does that person do? Well, they're still, like you said earlier, they're due the dignity of a human being, but they're also due the correction that will bring them back into right order. And so I think that's the part that maybe we have a difficulty with a lot of times because, like you said earlier, we don't like to lose relationships. Uh, I'm thinking of, let's take a child who's living in an irregular relationship and the parent is going, what do I do? We've seen a lot of these sometimes where the child may hold the parent hostage as to, you have to uphold my irregular relationship or I'm not going to come home. In that situation, now I've never been in that situation, so I'm not going to say it's not difficult, but in that
Oh, it's horribly
situation,
painful.
oh, absolutely. But in that situation, if we uphold their immoral lifestyle, they're not really going to respect us for that. They're going to see instead, I can demand X out of my parents, and they will do it if I show that I am going to be outraged at their standing against it.
Mhm.
Whereas if you use the corrective measures and you say, I still love you, you're my child, I'm never going to not love you, but I cannot uphold this lifestyle as a good. So if you choose that you don't want to have a relationship with me, that's not what I want, but that's your choice. And that's a difficult conversation to have.
Yeah, and parents feel such guilt. Parents take on such guilt whenever things just aren't perfect for their children and in their relationship. Um, and it's because of the great love that they have for their children. But there's been many parents where the kids say, "I want to live this sort of a lifestyle, and if you do not accept it, then you are rejecting me." And we have to come to realize that, those parents are the ones that absolutely love their children. They would never give up their children. But the children need to take that responsibility, and the parents should not have to bear that burden, for that either.
Yeah.
And just realize, I am never going to abandon you. Now, if you run away from that, that's your choice, not mine. But I'm still here for you.
Yeah. Well,
So
that's a very good thought. Thank you so much for that. I'm going to break in really quickly to remind you that you're listening to Divine Mercy Radio's Fall Carathon, Light in the Gospel. We're here with Father Nick Parker talking about what is forgiveness, what is it not first, so that way we can understand what is it then. We're having some great insight and wisdom being brought by him, so we thank him for being here. And we also want to thank all of you who are listening and all of our wonderful underwriters and donors. We ask that you would partner with them, as this is our fall pledge drive. We're 100% listener funded. We take no funds from the government so that we can just put out good Catholic content. If you like the content that we're putting out and you'd like to join with us, please call 785-621-4110. That's 785-621-4110 and make your pledge today. We do have about $11,500 left in matching funds. So let's see if we can get those used up as quickly as possible. Let's see if we can chop that in half by the time we go to lunch. 785-621-4110. Let's get the ball rolling. 785-621-4110. And back to Father Nick Parker. Father Nick Parker, man, I am getting my tongue tied here with what is forgiveness. I think our next thing then in what it is not would be, it is not reconciliation.
that's correct. Yes, it is not the same as reconciliation. The term reconciliation literally means, well, we're not going to go into the actual literal etymology of it, but the strict definition is a restoring of a relationship. A lot of the time, this is an ideal that once someone has hurt you, you want to forgive them and you want the relationship to be restored. But once again, this is not always possible, and it's not always even a good idea. especially when somebody has very deeply hurt you or is one of those people who is a repeat offender. You know, in this case, yes, we still want to forgive the person, but some relationships just can't be healed in this lifetime. Some reconciliation is only going to be able to happen in the life to come, in which case you still want what's best for the person. You still want what's good for the person. But if a person is who was a friend has hurt me incredibly deeply, I might just have to say we're going to just have to not be that close of friends anymore. You know, still love each
Yeah.
other, still support each other, still want what's good for each other, but you know, we just can't have that relationship anymore. Um, yeah, the harder the sin, the more true this is actually going to be. But in some cases, that's actually what's necessary. You know, when you have somebody who you've loved, who you've trusted, who has very much hurt you deeply, sometimes you have to go your separate ways.
And I think maybe we'll get into this in a little bit. So if I'm jumping the gun, say, wait, let's pause. Because what does it look like in a situation like that when we're talking about wanting the best for someone? It's hard to understand because we're like, wait, this is someone who just hurt me. And you're telling me I need to want the best for them.
Sure. Well, the ultimate desire that we should have for all humankind is salvation. You know, that, and you can't want anything better than that.
Yeah.
You know, and we'll get into that a little bit later on.
Okay.
But now this is a good time to bring it up. Is that if you can say I do want what's best for you, but it can't be this sort of a friendship. But I hope to see you in heaven someday.
Yeah.
You are wanting literally the best for that person.
Yeah. Fantastic. So let's get another what it's not. It is not a one-time thing. So, all right. Wipe my hands of it. I'm good.
A lot of people think that. People think, well, if I forgive, I should be done. You know, but Jesus says in the Gospel of Matthew to forgive 7 times, 77 times. Notice that he does not say how many times the person has offended you.
Oh, yeah.
Good
point.
Yeah. And I think everybody knows someone who's been in this situation where they've been hurt by a family member, or they've been hurt by a close friend, somebody who they very much loved and trusted. When that offense happens, they want to forgive, and they will even be able to say, okay, I forgive you. But then something happens that afternoon, it sparks up the memory, and all of a sudden they think, well, maybe I didn't forgive. Well, maybe you did, but maybe you just need to do it again. And maybe you'll need to forgive again the next day and the day after that. I have a good friend who, unfortunately, when he was in, I think he was in high school, one of his parents, unfortunately, decided to leave his family without really much of an explanation. And he talked about how hurtful and painful that was, but how he learned to forgive this parent again and again and again, even though to this day doesn't have a strong relationship with this parent, because the parent really hasn't come back into the life, but had to learn that it's okay to forgive over and over and over again. I also think this is important to let people know that if you ever find yourself in this situation where you're having to forgive over and over and over again, try not to think that that's a fault. People think maybe I'm not good at forgiving, or maybe I just haven't done it right. No, there's a reason why Jesus says to forgive 7 times, 77 times, because he knows that sometimes it's going to be necessary. And if you find yourself in that situation, you're doing exactly what Jesus has asked you to do. You're a follower of Christ when you're doing this. So it's okay to continue to forgive over and over and over again. Keep doing what Jesus asked you to.
Yeah, I think that draws into another part of our lives, temptation. We're going to be tempted. It's not the temptation that's the sin. It's the entering into it. And so, because people with a scrupulous conscience, they think that every time something pops into their head, like, oh no, I just sinned. Like, No.
No.
There sometimes there's outside sources that are going to do that. Sometimes thoughts are just going to pop into your head. Yes, maybe there's a demonic influence that's trying to get at you, but it's not that immediate. Oh no, I thought of when they slapped me across the face again. Okay, that's not sinful. And that, like you're saying, same thing equates
Mhm.
to forgiveness here.
And whenever you meet those situations, you're right, the temptation's not the sin. What you do with it is going to lead either to sin or it can be a great occasion of virtue.
Yeah.
I remember the person slapped me across the face again. Okay, what are you going to do with that? Are you going to stew with it? Are you going to be angry at the person? Are you going to bring up all the bad memories that you have and hold it against them? Or are you going to forgive them again? In which case, you could do the sinful thing, but you could do the saintly thing that is actually leading you into greater grace and virtue.
Yeah, that is wonderful. Want to take a really quick break here because I see that during the last hour, we had an anonymous donation for $50 because they were trying to top Deacon Bill's hour. I may have started a friendly competition between Deacon Bill and his wife. And so if you want to keep that going and you want to donate and say, I appreciated them being on, I'm going to donate toward Mandy's hour, or I'm going to donate toward Deacon Bill's hour. Call 785-621-4110, 785-621-4110. Let's use up those matching funds and let's get back with Father Nick Parker talking about what is forgiveness. So this last one here, I think, kind of goes with some of the other things you've talked about, but what do you mean when you talk about forgiveness not being full healing?
Sure. Yeah. Sometimes people think, well, I still feel hurt by what the person has done, so I must not have forgiven them. Forgiveness is not a full healing. Think of it in this way. We oftentimes compare when someone hurts us to a wound. And sometimes, wounds can be very deep. Now, when a wound heals, people who have had injuries know this. Sometimes we treat the injury, we treat the wound the best we can so that the person can continue living. But that doesn't mean there aren't scars. It doesn't mean that there are still things that are going to hurt. Sometimes people with injuries are still going to walk with a limp or not be able to just fully function as they used to before. It doesn't mean the injury hasn't been treated. It just means that you're going to have to learn how to continue going with the hurt. Once again, sometimes people will hurt us very deeply, and that hurt is going to be with us at least throughout the rest of this lifetime. That doesn't mean you haven't forgiven the person. You learn how to continue to live even though the hurt is still there. But that's not the same thing as forgiveness. Yeah. So it's not that full healing that we oftentimes think of.
That's a very good visual for us. So let's then kind of move into if we know now all the things that it's not forgetfulness, it's not atonement or justice, it's not reconciliation, it's not one time, and it's not the full healing. What is it? What does it look like?
Okay, we've cut out most, not all, but we've cut out most of the misconceptions of it. The way that we're going to describe what forgiveness is I'm going to refer to a couple scripture passages. The first one is the parable of the unforgiving servant, which also comes from Matthew 18. So I've referenced Matthew 18 a couple times now. It's a great passage. If you get a chance today, anyone out there, read Matthew 18, especially the part on forgiveness. In this parable, a servant goes to a master because the servant owes a master an astronomical debt, and the master forgives the debt. That servant then goes to another servant who owes a much smaller debt, refuses to forgive it, and even has the other servant beaten and thrown into prison, which people don't like seeing that. So they report it to the master. The master says, I forgave you of your great debt. Couldn't you have forgiven this other person of the smaller debt? And has the person then thrown into the first servant thrown into prison as well until he pays off his debt. All right, so that's it in a nutshell. Jesus told it a lot better than I did. So go ahead and read that.
Read it.
But I think that forgiveness is actually that simple. No more debts. That's basically what it is. Forgiveness means no more debts. Um, so in essence, when somebody offends us or hurts us, oftentimes we want something from them in return. We want some sort of restitution. We want sometimes some sort of revenge. We want to see them have to own up to it and everything. And sometimes people just say, I just want an apology. I want them to say that they're sorry. Forgiveness means that you don't have any debts anymore. You don't need the vengeance. You don't need the restitution. You don't need anything coming back to you. You don't even need the apology. It's done. It doesn't mean that you're not still hurt. It doesn't mean that you're not still offended. It doesn't mean that you've forgotten it. And it doesn't mean that you're going to be friends with them again. It just means that you don't need anything anymore. No more debts. I think another place where this comes into the scriptures, which is very powerful, is actually with Jesus on the cross. When Jesus was on the cross, one of the last words that he says is he says the words, "It is finished." There's a very interesting scriptural interpretation of that, because the term that he uses was also a common legal term at the time. There was a practice that whenever there was some sort of a transaction, and it was usually some sort of a business transaction, whether that was a loan or a debt or a bill somebody had to pay, as soon as they were done paying it, they would write on their promissory note or whatever it was the words, "It is finished," meaning that the debt had been paid in full. So when Jesus on the cross says, "It is finished," he's using that same term, saying, no more debts. The debt is paid. There are now no more debts. It's a term of actually forgiveness as well.
Yeah, this has been greatly healing in my own life too. Anytime that we realize we're harboring resentment, anger, something like that, and it does take a little bit of letting it happen, but to look at Christ on the cross and go, oh, wait, he forgives me every time. It's hard because we want forgiveness for ourselves, but sometimes we're like, but him, he hurt me so bad. So I find that to be a very good, okay, if you can look at the cross and go, but he forgives me every single time.
Mm-hmm.
And in my sin, I have offended the infinite. I'm not infinite. It doesn't mean I don't have worth, but this person has offended me, another human person. If the infinite can forgive me, I need to learn how to forgive them.
Yeah. And it is painfully difficult.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely painfully difficult. But this is also one of the reasons why I think this is such a good topic, is because people try to incorporate the atonement and the healing and the reconciliation and all of it, and they take all that on at once. And sometimes that's too much. Those are ideals. We like them. If we can have them, we will work towards them. But when the first step is just that forgiveness, then that like taking out all of the misconceptions and just focusing on the no more debts element, that makes it a little bit more achievable. That just allows you to take that first step that you need.
Yeah.
And in reality, that's the beginning of the healing process as well. You can't really start to heal if you haven't had that forgiveness, if you haven't given up those debts that are owed to you. Because a lot of those debts are never going to be paid.
Yeah.
You're never going to get them. So to let them go is incredibly freeing. Just going back to the analogy of the wound, I'm totally swiping this from Father Fred Gatchett, but he once had this great analogy. I think he still uses it today, that people think that when you've been wounded deeply, you haven't forgiven somebody until it's completely healed. He says that's not forgiveness. Forgiveness isn't a complete healing. Forgiveness is getting the infection out so that the healing can start. And only once you get that infection out, that forgiveness out, can you then start to say, okay, now I'm going to start actually desiring whatever is good for the person. Now that I've forgiven them, now I can actually hope the best for them. If there is any reconciliation that's possible, now I can work towards it. If there is any sort of forgetfulness that might happen, then I can work towards it. But none of it can happen unless you take that first step of forgiveness. But take that first step first.
Absolutely. I want to thank Larry and Mary Schlick, who gave $300. That's a $600 donation due to our matching funds. So I also want to thank all of those donors who give us those matching funds. That comes from individuals and businesses within our listening areas. And so thank you so very much. I know that we have people that are all across Kansas that are such good donors, and we are so appreciative of that, as we are 100% listener funded. That's actually why we are on the radio station right now doing our pledge drive. If you can help us out with that, our total goal is $125,000. I know that we still have about $11,200 or something like that left. And so if you can help us out, call 785-621-4110. We have amazing donors, from the $10 donors to the $5,000 donors, $10,000 donors. And so don't ever think that your donation doesn't matter. It's every single one of them that gets us to that goal. And those goals we set for the purpose of knowing, okay, this is what we can do with the stations, and especially if God is putting it on our hearts that, hey, maybe you ought to expand a little bit. And I'm not saying that that's what's happening right now, but that has happened because we started with one. We're now at 5 stations. And so I just want to point out that we only are able to do that because we have such wonderful donors. Thank you so much. Call 785-621-4110. That's 785-621-4110. And let's use up those matching funds. Let's also get back into this conversation about what is forgiveness with Father Nick Parker. Okay, so we started down the road of now we're in what it is. Said first, take that first step. All right, this begins the process. And then where do we go if we can take that first step of no more debts?
Yeah, so once you have no more debts, like I said, that's the beginning of the healing process. That's how you then are able to learn how to continue to move forward without the infection of forgiveness. And it's so freeing not to be a debt collector in a sense, to say that you don't need any of that anymore. But once again, it doesn't mean that you can't seek justice or atonement, because that is corrective, that is restorative, that's still okay. But that's very different than vengeance and restitution, which comes from a very negative place, it's just, once you have that forgiveness, then that's the freedom that you need to keep moving forward. One other thing, though, that we also have to say, another misconception that is important to keep in mind with all this, though, is that forgiveness is not unconditional. And this is if we are seeking forgiveness ourselves. We know that God's love is unconditional, but there are several places in the scriptures where God does say that there are conditions to being forgiven. Now, we are supposed to forgive freely ourselves. We're not God, all right?
Yeah.
But if we want to receive forgiveness from God, we do have to forgive, and that's the condition. If you want to be forgiven, you have to forgive. This is seen in a number of places. The parable of the unforgiving servant in Matthew 18, it ends with the unforgiving servant being thrown back into prison, and his debt is put back on him because he did not forgive the other servant. He wasn't willing to forgive, and so his debt of unforgiveness was put back on him as well. And the parable ends with Jesus saying, "So will my heavenly Father do to you unless you forgive your brother from your heart." So it's absolutely important. Also, think of the parable of the prodigal son. The prodigal son parable ends with the prodigal son coming home. There's this great big feast, but the older brother isn't able to join the heavenly feast because he's not willing to forgive the younger brother. He might, we don't know. We're left with a cliffhanger, but we know that he's not joining the feast until he forgives. But we even prayed in the Our Father. We say, "Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us." And when Jesus teaches the Our Father in the scriptures, he even goes on to have a teaching of forgiveness, saying that in essence, if we wish to be forgiven, we ourselves must forgive, because we will not be forgiven if we ourselves are not a person of forgiveness. It's because of this that St. Gregory the Great once said, and I'm very much paraphrasing, that it's quite possible that our greatest enemy is going to be our key to salvation. And he says, because not only are we supposed to forgive, but we're even supposed to love our enemies, which means that if we're not willing to forgive and even love those who have offended us, our own salvation is actually in jeopardy because of it. Could be in jeopardy because of that.
Yeah. I'm really glad that those are great points. And I'm glad that you brought up the prodigal son, because a couple things that were coming to mind is the older son himself wasn't the one that was wronged.
We don't know if he committed a single sin in his entire life.
So, the older son, the father proclaims, "Everything I have is yours." So the younger son didn't take anything from the older son. Now, you can understand that, like, well, I'm angry for dad or something like that, but that's not the sense that it gives us either, because he doesn't seem to be worried about dad's stuff. This was the younger son's inheritance anyway. He's getting it early. He seems to be upset because, well, he went and squandered it on all this stuff. And you almost get a sense like, okay, what is it you're really upset about? That'd be kind of a neat conversation, because I've heard some people even say, it kind of points to he's upset that the younger son got away with all this simple lifestyle and he hasn't gotten to go basically. Yeah. And so whether that is how it is or not, I think that's a good lesson for us to understand is, don't drum up false injuries, I guess it may be. You can be upset or frustrated with things that are happening, but especially if it's not happening to you, then you may be causing unforgiveness in a situation that hasn't really harmed you anyway.
Sure. Yeah. I can sometimes sympathize a little bit with the older son, though, because and I think parents know this as well. I think parents really understand it. Because if somebody comes up and insults the parent, saying, you're an idiot, the parent's going to be like, okay, whatever. If somebody goes up to the parent's child and says, "You're an idiot," oh my gosh, watch out. So when the younger son squanders the father's property, it's quite possible that the older son would be like, "I love the father. I always want what's best for the father. If the younger son, if my brother offends me, I don't care, but don't mess with my dad."
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
Yeah,
that's a good point.
Sometimes we're hurt a lot more by people who hurt those that we love.
Yeah, that's a fair point. So then how do we, let's look at that for a minute. In a situation like that, even where, maybe they haven't harmed us, but maybe that is the greater harm that, because I think you're right. Somebody can harm us and maybe brush it off to a degree, but then if it hurts one of our family members, that's going to cause me indignation. How do we walk in the light of Christ in a situation then where it has caused that real deep pain in us because they've hurt a family member?
Oh gosh, yeah. When it's with family members, I think it's all kind of it all kind of works the same way, where a lot of it is going to have to be a little bit of a discernment of our desires. Like, so let's say somebody hurts a family member of mine, all right? Once again, that's gonna hurt me a lot more than someone hurts me directly to myself, all right? Do I want vengeance? Do I want restitution? Do I want proverbially this person's head on a platter? You know, um, and if so, then I'm moving into that realm of sinfulness and unforgiveness. But am I willing to let all that go? And if so, that doesn't mean that I can't once again seek some sort of justice or atonement, saying I still think that this person should make things right. But um, but if I can let go of the debts that are owed to to my family member and to me, well, then that person's forgiven. That doesn't mean I'm not still hurt by it. It doesn't mean that I'm going to go out and say, oh, you offended my family member, but let's be friends.
Let's go hang out.
I'm not going to do that. That probably would not be a good idea. But at least I can say that I've forgiven them. Now, this is where the whole forgiveness and love thing goes together, because we talked about how St. Gregory the Great said that our greatest enemy could possibly be our means of salvation, because not only are we supposed to forgive them, but we're also supposed to love our enemies. If I can say, well, this person who hurt my family member, what should I desire for this person? I desire this person to, know their wrongs. I think that's okay.
Yeah.
But I wish them to also experience some form of redemption. I want them to experience some sort of reconciliation. I want them to experience the virtue that they need so that they can become a better person for this. And ultimately, I hope that they come to know the love and mercy of God so that we can all be in heaven. So now we're moving towards desiring the good for them. Not only have I given up the debts, I'm desiring their good, and I'm learning how to love the enemy who I've forgiven.
That's a big one, but that helps a lot. You're listening to Divine Mercy Radio's Fall Carathon, Light in the Darkness. Having a great conversation with Father Nick Parker here on forgiveness, and that is one of those huge lights that we need in times of darkness in our own lives, our families' lives, and those around us. And so make sure that you stay right here, keep listening, and let's do a second question, because I forgot to do that. Second question of the 10 o'clock hour. Here we go. Where would you find the story of the Israelites after Moses' death? Is it A, Proverbs, B, Leviticus, C, Exodus, or D, Joshua? So this is which book of the Bible are you going to find the story of the Israelites after Moses dies? Is it A, Proverbs, B, Leviticus, C, Exodus, D, Joshua? 785-621-4110. Let's see if we can get a winner. 785-621-4110. That's the same number you call if you would like to donate. Let's get back with Father Nick Parker. So, Father, can we then look at some examples in our own lives or people that we know that would give us an understanding of maybe what this looks like in real time?
Sure. I'll give actually a couple of examples. I had one in mind in particular, but another one came to mind earlier. One example that I love is when Pope John Paul II there was an attempted assassination on him. And of course he miraculously survived that, really. And after he was healed, he actually went to the prison where the person who committed the crime was, and he actually spoke with him and forgave him for trying to take his life.
Yeah.
Incredibly powerful. I have no idea what was going on through Pope John Paul II's mind at that time.
Yeah, really.
I mean, he's the Pope, right? But and he was incredibly holy. He's a saint. But just the bravery of being able to confront your attacker that way. Now, of course, that doesn't mean that he says, well, now they've forgiven you, you can go out, you can be free of jail.
You can just leave, yeah.
Yeah. It's like, it's okay, I forgave him, guys. You can let him go now. It's probably not going to happen.
No.
But it doesn't mean that the forgiveness wasn't there, and that that Pope John Paul II still wasn't showing the love of Christ in that moment as well. Another example, though, that I think is kind of still a bit fresh on people's minds, but it was incredibly powerful. And I even saw some controversy on this online, was when Erica Kirk said that she forgave the person that killed her husband, Charlie Kirk. Now, with that, this is a little bit more one of those controversial ones because, I mean, Charlie Kirk was kind of this master speaker, and there were a number of things that he said that were very much in line with the Catholic Church. That doesn't mean the Catholic Church endorses everything that he says. So, like, I don't want to get into that issue there.
Sure.
But one of the non-negotiables here is that the assassination was completely unjust.
Yeah.
We never resort to violence and killing someone in order to win our arguments or yes. So that was completely unjust. So we're not going to, that's something that is non-debatable in this case. However, when Erica was able to speak to the crowds and she said, I forgive him because that's what Jesus did and that's what Charlie would do. It did create a lot of conversation in the news and the media. And some people thought, oh, wow, how wonderful this is, how powerful this is. This is great. But I also saw a lot of comments that were saying, well, she was emotional. She probably didn't actually forgive him because how can she when this happened to her and her family? And also notice how she was still crying when she said that. She's still deeply hurt by this. So she didn't actually forgive him. And also she's still going to be upset at him and mad at him. And so, that their forgiveness wasn't there. And some people just thought it was a great big stunt, whatever it is. But the thing is, we can only judge what we're able to see. And what we saw was someone who said, I forgive him. And those words were incredibly powerful. And once again, we have to go back to what that actually means. It doesn't mean that she said that they shouldn't seek justice, that there shouldn't be some sort of correction that was done. It doesn't mean that she's now going to, be friends with the person who committed the crime. It doesn't mean she's going to forget it. She'll never forget it.
Yeah.
And there's going to be times throughout the rest of her life and the rest of her children's life that they are going to be struggling with this for sure. And we need to be very sensitive and very compassionate to that. But for her to say, I don't need anything from him anymore. That's what the forgiveness means. I don't need anything from him anymore. That's the first step. That's what the forgiveness is. And we have no reason to doubt that she didn't actually forgive him in that case, which is what made it so incredibly powerful and such a great example of exactly what forgiveness is and also what it's not.
Yeah, because those things that people are listing, it's funny because you just went through what it's not. And all those externals are things that people were looking at and going, oh, she couldn't have because of this. And we just walked through, well, that's not what forgiveness is.
Exactly.
So,
but what she did was so healing for herself, for her family, for the people that were affected by it, and that's what forgiveness is. It's that first step. She'll never be fully healed. They will never be fully healed from this experience.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that the injury hasn't been treated.
Yeah. I also looked to Saint Maria Goretti. She was stabbed 13 times and on her deathbed forgives her attacker, shows up in his cell to him, after she died with these flowers, one for each time that he had stabbed her. And so later, after he serves his jail sentence, he actually gets out, goes to Maria's mom, knocks on the door and asks her for her forgiveness. And she says, my daughter forgave you. Jesus forgave you. How could I not? And so that's another one of
Yeah.
those stories that I'm always blown away by. That here's this. I think she was 12 or 13 when this happened. And she gets it, and she's a great example. Her and her mom to the rest
Mhm.
of us.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to remind everybody really quickly, you're listening to Divine Mercy Radio's Fall Carathon, Light in the Darkness. We're talking with Father Nick Parker about forgiveness, and it's been a beautiful conversation. Once again, if you didn't get to see it or if you want to watch it again, go back and find it on YouTube. It'll probably be uploaded there maybe tomorrow or Monday, whenever Michael's able to get to that. But at some point within the next week, they will be up there. You can go back and watch. I also want to congratulate Mary Schlick, who wins our trivia question. Where would you find the story of the Israelites after Moses' death? That would be the book of Joshua, his successor. So thank you so very much for listening. Congratulations to winning that question, Mary. We'll get you put into that drawing for a gift certificate to Messenger Traditional Catholic Books and Gifts, and we will draw that at 6 o'clock with all of our other prizes. So be sure to stay tuned. Back to Father Nick Parker talking about forgiveness. So, Father, we've got about 7 or 8 minutes left here. We've had a great conversation about what it's not, what it is. What are some of the last things that maybe you can help us to understand this better?
Sure. Well, if I may, I might just offer sort of a practice of prayer and discernment for people.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it's a little bit difficult to know if I've forgiven somebody. With this, once again, Saint Gregory the Great says that our greatest enemy might quite possibly be our means to salvation. I would say for a lot of people, that's the goal, but you might not be ready for that yet. All right. Because, I don't know where people are. The people are all over the place with their relationships and those who need forgiveness. So pick something attainable to start off with. But picture the person in your mind, and you're going to have to at least remember a little bit of the offense that happened to you. With this, try to do a discernment of desire. And I talked about this a little bit earlier, but to just make it really tangible, with that person in front of you, try to do a discernment of desire. What do you want for that person? Once again, do you want vengeance? Do you want restitution? Do you want some sort of public exposing of what happened and the person to get what's due to them? Or are you even just wanting an apology? Look at those desires. But at the same time, if you do, well, first of all, if you do desire those things, if there is anything that you have, that would be the debt that is owed to you, which means that the person still isn't forgiven necessarily. That's where there still needs to be some forgiveness that's done. But if you can say, no, I'm going to give up all of that, the giving up of the debt is the forgiveness. And if you can say, I no longer desire that, then you're at the point of forgiveness. St. Gregory the Great, though, says that not only should we forgive, but we need to learn to love our enemies. That's the next step of discernment of your desires. Because sometimes people are at the point of, yeah, I'm willing to forgive, but I'm not ready to love. All right. Well, okay, then try to start taking the next step. Can you desire something good for the person? And start with what you're able to. Maybe you're not able yet to desire that they have a happy, carefree life and everything's perfect for them. But can you at least desire that they have a good day at work? Can you at least, desire that they have a good meal at the end of the day? If you can desire something good, then start to build upon that, because you're building upon your ability to love them as well. Once you have that, once you've been able to realize your desire for giving up the debts and start to desire the good, then you are really on that right path of forgiveness, of love, and of what it means to have that that real Christ-like mercy and compassion for people. And that's ultimately where we want to be, is to be able to be those people of Christ's mercy and forgiveness. If you're not able to get to any of those stages, then once again, we want to start with where you're able to go. Think of what you need and pray for that, so that you can start to make those steps towards proper desire. So if you're saying that I'm not at the place of forgiveness, okay, God, what do I need to get there? God, do I need more understanding? Do I need to have different insights of the situation? Lord, do I need to just dive deeper into your scriptures and your healing? Whatever it is, try to at least pray for what you need, the virtues that you need, so you can get to the point of giving up the debts and desiring the good. But that's going to be something that you have to work out on your own in prayer with God, because he's going to know what you need more than anyone else.
Yeah.
But trust that God knows it, and go to God asking him, what do I need? Please give me what I need, so that I can enter into the giving up of the negative desires and taking on those that are good.
Yeah, that goes right along with some spiritual direction that a priest gave me one time, and it was the same type of thing. If you can't desire it, then pray, Lord, help me to have the desire for X.
Yes.
So yeah, pray that, okay, well, yeah, I don't want to forgive. So maybe that needs to be your prayer, is, Lord, give me the desire to forgive.
Mhm.
Because you got to start somewhere.
Exactly. And sometimes this whole process of forgiving and learning to love your enemy is, once again, incredibly painful, and sometimes even incredibly burdensome. And people are not always able to take it all on at once. I've known some saintly people who are able to do it in a heartbeat. A lot of people just need time, and it's a process, and it's a difficult, long, hard process. Sometimes it takes years, a lifetime with the process. Be patient with yourself. Know that God's going to be patient with you as well. And start small. Don't try to take on the entire world all at once. But if all you can do is say, Lord, grant me the desires I'm supposed to have, that's, take whatever step you need. Just take a step at a time, though.
Fantastic. Father, thank you so much. Would you leave us with your blessing today?
Sure. Heavenly Father, you are a good and loving God. We thank you for your kindness, your love, your mercy, your forgiveness. Help us to grow in virtue. May we become more like your Son and follow him wherever he leads. And may Almighty God bless you, the Father, of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.
Amen. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day, Father.
All right, thank you. You too. Appreciate the time.
We are listening to Divine Mercy Radio's Fall Carathon, A Light in the Darkness. So I want to thank an anonymous